Well, it's such a pleasure and a blessing. But what's the best alignment strategy for not only having great health, but actually knowing and trusting that my body is vibrant and strong, instead of being challenged with insecurity, vulnerability, and fears that my body may fail? You've just got to practice the good feeling thoughts more, which means for right now, stay off the subject altogether, because you've thought the vulnerable thoughts more than you've thought the other thoughts. So right now, it would be a struggle for you to consistently think that this is going to sound off the subject, but it's so on the subject that it's going to make you laugh. So a few weeks ago, there was a man in a hot seat, and he had created a new barbecue contraption that he wanted to introduce to the market. But he was worried about it, because while he knows he's got something good, there's a lot to do before it can be viable in the marketplace and start making him any money. So after we played with him for a little while, and he just kept worrying, it's like he couldn't hear us because his thoughts about what wasn't going well had more momentum, so much so that he couldn't really even hear us very well. So we asked the audience, we said, would it help this person if he could feel satisfied more often? And everyone said yes. And then we asked the audience, who are always more clear-minded than the person in the hot seat, does he have to be satisfied about the barbecue thing? And they all said no, he just has to be satisfied. So if there were ever a subject that really applies to, is the subject of physical bodily conditions, because you take your body almost everywhere you go. So it's on your mind a lot, your body and money and love, and oh well, they're about there. There are things that if or a lobotomy would help. It'll set you back a bit. But other than that, so just get off the subject if you can. Well, how can you stop thinking about something? Well, you can't stop thinking about it, because you're thinking about the thing that you decide to stop thinking about. Not going to think about this thing any more than I'm thinking about, because it's not good for me to think about these things I'm thinking about, but I'm not going to think about this and get doesn't work. So you have to find something else to think about. So are there other things that are of interest to you? Other things that ring your bells? Other things that you feel thrilled about, or excited about, or in love about? Just get your attention on some other things, and let your worrisome thoughts stop being renewed. Just let them peter out, they will. If you don't give attention to them, they won't stay active within you. You're the only one that's keeping them active. Sure, that definitely resonates. I had a lot of health problems in my 20s. But then I came into a book called You Could Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. Yeah, which is extremely empowering. At the time, I was able to identify certain things must have meaning. And then when I aligned my energy to the new positive thought, a more satisfying thought, a lot of my health challenges dissipated. As I have recently up-leveled, in other words, what you did, you sort of rewired yourself, you said, because I thought that this happened, because I thought that this happened, because I thought that this happened. There can be productivity in that. But there's also a little bit of entrapment in that judgment. There's that now later, as I've evolved my consciousness, and I'm like, that worked back then. But now my basis of reality is elevated, and so it doesn't feel as good to go put meaning or label to. Oh, my back hurts. It must mean that I must have money problems, or my right arm hurts. I must mean I have masculine stuff going on, so it's... The book was excellent for a period. But then now I feel like I just don't choose to have my body communicate that way. With me. I'd like to say all of this, you're not doing the only thing we asked you to do, which is get off the subject. Which I find is harder when there's a physical for whatever reason. It's hard when there's momentum going. Don't explain it to us. We know there's momentum going, but you just got to let that momentum peter out. And it peters out a little bit in the night. It dissipates altogether. When you're focused on other things, you've just got to decide, is this thought satisfying or not? And if it's satisfying, stay with it. If it isn't, find another one. But the reason that we encourage you to change the subject is because when you have so much momentum going for so long, then almost every thought you have is not satisfying. So you say, is this satisfied? No. Is it satisfied? No. Is it satisfied? No. Is it satisfied? No. How about this one? Nope. How about this one? Nope. Time to go to bed is dissatisfied. Nope. Is it satisfying now? Because you just want to find something that's satisfying, and there are so many things that are easy to find that are satisfying. I agreed. People might look at someone who's having this situation and they might think, just give it a rest. Well, that's easier said than done, because law of attraction has those thoughts going into belief is a thought that you continue to think so. Understand it, and don't be mad at yourself about it, just understand it, and then find some out there thoughts that are also easy to think. Yeah, interestingly enough, I was in the hot seat last year, and right after that, a bunch of stuff kicked up. And I felt like okay, as I'm realigning to my next level, working, okay. Now, because of that, on premise, people want to justify where I am right now by all kinds of stuff. Don't do that. I went through an identity shift, talking. Every word that comes out of your mouth is working against the thing you want. So just start by saying, all my thoughts are unsatisfying. I'm just gonna meditate. It's all right, you're doing what almost everybody does. This is what you're doing, and we sure get why. But we're just gonna explain this to you really briefly. So I'm standing in this place that I don't really want to be, and I'm aware that I don't want to be here. And I'm probably aware that other people are aware that I don't want to be here. And maybe other people don't want me to be here either. I'm really aware that I'm here, so I feel a need to explain why I'm here. So past lives, relationship with my mother, I had this doctor once. In other words, I need to justify where I am. And that is the biggest, first and foremost, biggest, baddest, worst. This false premise that people carry around. It's that belief that you've got to explain where you are. And think about how really not smart that is. If you're not standing where you want to be, why would you spend 1 minute explaining why you're where you don't want to be? When you doubt, understand that explaining where you are, when it's not where you want to be, will just hold you there longer. So it's like all the words that are coming out of your mouth. This is what they're saying. I don't like where I am. Let me talk to you about it so that I can stay here longer. That's what all of that translates to. And you know it because it's not satisfied, not satisfied, not satisfied, not satisfied. Or is it satisfying to justify? We're asking you sometimes. So sometimes it feels satisfying to justify something. Let's talk about why that might be. Because we're under the influence of people who want to know why we're standing in the place we don't want to be, rather than under the influence of our inner being. Under that wrong influence, if justifying, explaining, if defending feels satisfying, well, we know it does to a certain extent. Blame feels better than guilt. And revenge feels better than fear, we understand. But after a while, you just gotta say, revenge doesn't feel satisfying, and blame doesn't feel satisfying, and neither does guilt, and neither does justify. None of that feels satisfying, and none of it gets me anywhere. It's just sort of anything. And the universe hears doesn't want to be there, that doesn't want to be there, as it doesn't want to be there, as it doesn't want to be there, as it doesn't want to be there. And every time you do it, your inner being calls you even stronger to what you really want. So you're gonna like this. You've been in a situation where you're talking with someone, and you have a difference of opinion, and you're sure you're right, and the other are sure that they are right. And so you explain and they defend, and then they explain and you defend. And so you're each really going after it, trying to get the other one to agree with you. Neither one of you are making any ground at all, and you just both feel worse and worse. And then you blame the other for not feeling good. Anybody ever experienced anything like that? So you have exactly those two things going on inside of you. It's just you and you. So this is how we want you to see this, by living something that you don't want and therefore asking for the improvement. Your inner being. Do you believe your inner being exists? Yeah. Do you believe that this vibrational reality exists? Yes. So your inner being in this vibrational reality is clearly who you now are and what you now want to fully manifest, and gives undivided attention only to that new improvement. So your inner being is giving attention to that. And then you live more contrast and you ask for more. So your inner being calls you even stronger, and then you live more contrast, and then you ask for more. So the more you defend and don't let yourself go, the more you ask, and the more your inner being gets clearer and calls you in a stronger way. So the more your inner being calls you, This is a point where leading up to this is the greatest justification if there is one, and there really isn't for you defending your inner being knows who you are and knows how you want to be and is telling you come on, and you're not going, and the more your inner being calls, the more you act like that stubborn human who just explains why you can't go, and that's what you've been doing. Been with us since you've been sitting here is a human thing you've picked up along your physical trail. We get the sort of human illogic in the logic. We understand why so many do it. You're certainly not the only one. Everybody in this room does it to some extent, so you can't stop it. But what can you start? What can you do instead of that? What can you do? Well, I've been laying down new tracks. So as I mentioned, I went through an identity shift that really caused me to stop it. Stop it. Well, what I'm saying is I've made choices consciously that no, and I have friends that surround. I made conscious choices. Yes, not I made conscious choices. No, yeah, I make conscious choices. Yeah. To align with what my inner being is. Yeah. And so that's, I guess my point is, noticing the momentum and just staying gentle with myself. And the question initially was, do you have any strategies? But my strategies are still a strategy with consistent strategy. I've just been consistent with it. And then noticing what you really want to say, that noticing when I'm out of alignment, that's satisfying, so satisfying to fess up like that. I've been bad, Abraham. We're really nitpicky. Really nitpicking, but you got to catch it in the early stages, and you've got to stay off the subject. So we like to take a minute with you and get on another subject. So what's ringing your bells these days? What you got going on? That is thrilling to you? A new women's empowerment program that I'm launching. Yeah, about being turned on, tuned in, desiring, bringing your sexy back. That's what it's about, what's called bringing sexy back. Bringing your sexy back, feeling tapped in, tuned into your desire, your pleasure, what it is that really lights you up. Because that's what is in alignment with inner being and questions. You've got it all figured out. I certainly don't necessarily have it all figured out, but I am connected. Well, on that subject. You do? Yeah, I do. Just focus on that and everything else will take care of itself.